Welcome to Trash Talk Reverse. I'm Harry, and today we're going to be watching Season 2, Episode 7 of Game of Thrones. The last episode had a lot going on everywhere, and the only storyline we didn't catch up with was Stannis, which was for the better, because I really don't give a crap about him, but that probably means he'll be back in this episode. I'm also wondering if we're going to see Balon and Yara Greyjoy again, and see if they get the news about Theon's conquest at some point soon. Also, doesn't Theon pretend to have killed Bran and Rickon, so maybe that's coming up as well. Farther north, Jon and Ygritte are probably going to be off in the wilderness alone the whole time, because I don't think he's going to meet up with Mance Rayder this soon. Then down south, we'll probably have some development in King's Landing regarding what happened last episode, and especially in the episode before with Tyrion finding out about Wildfire, because Blackwater is coming up in episode 9. If we're lucky, we'll be back with Tywin and Arya, because we've had some great dialogue between the two of them. Also, I'm hoping to see better transitional editing and overall structuring, because that was a glaring issue in the last episode. So without further ado, let's jump into episode 7.
Those boys are of far more value to you alive than dead.
They have no value to me missing.
Robb will have sent a force to retake Winterfell by now.
Robb's in the Riverlands. My sister's in Deepwood Motte. She'll get here long before they do.
If I remember correctly, Yara doesn't show up, right?
You're a boy who's never been with a girl.
I heard they get all swollen and bruised if you don't use them. They're no girl crows, so the lads just do it with each other.
Sure no.
With your hands then. No wonder you're all so miserable.
Would you please shut up?
Would you please shut up? You think you're better than me, Crow? I'm a free woman.
You're not a free woman. That's what prisoner means.
And you think you're free? You swore some stupid oath and now you can never touch a girl.
It was my choice to say the words.
So instead of getting naked with a girl, you prefer to invade our land?
Wildings raid our lands all the time. Some of them try to kill my little brother.
We've been here the whole time. You lot came along and just put up a big wall and said it was yours.
Who told Jon about the attack on Bran? Like, does the Night's Watch just randomly get reports like that? Also, this conversation is progressing really weirdly. It's like they wanted to pack in a bunch of talking points in this scene, and so they're just kind of rattling them off right now.
I don't care if you hanged 100. Man tried to kill me. I want his name and I want his head.
Killing them isn't the problem. It's finding them.
They just hanged a bunch of random people. It's a little weird because they were torturing people and Tywin came in and told them don't do that because we need these men. And now he's just hanging people left and right. I understand he thinks somebody tried to kill him and so he's on high alert. But like this guy said, killing people isn't the problem. It's finding them. So Tywin needs to come up with a better strategy than just hanging random people. Also, it was interesting to cut to Arya pulling out the knife thing when he said killing them.
Gone soft, Clegane.
Clegane? That's the mountain? Is that the same guy they had before? Also, have we ever heard him talk before?
This will be my last war. This is the one I'll be remembered for. You know what legacy means? Aaron the Black thought this castle would be his legacy. The Great Hall had 35 hearths. Look at it now. A blasted ruin. Do you know what happened?
Dragons?
Yes.
This is an example of exposition done well, rather than previous scenes of characters just talking to random people and giving them their life story. Tywin is giving this information to somebody who's important to the story, Arya, and it's not that he's just expositing at her. She's responding, and he's taking on this strange sort of teacher/parental role, kind of filling the void of Ned in a way, essentially teaching Arya some life lessons.
1 million men could have marched on these walls and 1 million men would have been repelled. Aegon Targaryen changed the rules.
And his sisters. It was Rhaenys and Visenya too.
Student of history, are you?
Rhaenys rode Meraxus. Visenya rode Vhagar.
The way he's talking about Harrenhal here, how it's completely impenetrable except by dragons, it would have been nice for this to come into play when Dany finally gets to Westeros. But as we know, that didn't happen. So once again, wasted potential, thanks to how the later seasons unfolded.
She had a Valyrian steel sword she called Dark Sister.
Are most girls more interested in the pretty maidens from the songs?
I don't like what he was saying about, oh, most girls are into this, blah, blah, blah. Again, it falls into the same pattern of Arya's not like other girls, and I really don't like that forced characterization in this show. What I do like is how Arya is showing such interest in figures like the female Targaryens. So you would think that in later seasons, when Dany shows up, there would be more of an interaction between Arya and Dany, and maybe even more of a relationship there. But there's absolutely nothing there at all. Like, does she even talk to Dany? I can't even remember if she even meets her, except maybe for a little bit when Dany's in Winterfell and they're trying to deal with the Night King and all that.
Most girls are idiots.
And for her to be like, most girls are idiots, like, come on, don't do that. It would be one thing if she later on learns to get away from that generalization of other girls are inferior to me, but that never happens, right? So I'm just not a fan of the way they tried to characterize her with this trope.
You remind me of my daughter. Ready to learn all this stuff.
From my father.
It's interesting that she reminds him of Cersei, but again, it's something that I don't think is developed at all later on. Like this exchange right here, is it going to have some sort of impact on Tywin and Cersei's relationship when Tywin goes back to King's Landing? And we know that it's not going to have any impact between Arya and Cersei's relationship down the road because they don't have one, even though she's on Arya's kill list.
Low-born girls say, my lord, not my lord. If you're going to pose as a commoner, you should do it properly.
My mother served Lady Dustin for many years. She taught me how to speak properly.
You're too smart for your own good.
We finally got Tywin saying, you're not who you say you are, you're highborn. And even with Arya trying to defend herself, you can tell Tywin still knows better. So it just gives them this very interesting dynamic.
Thank you for saving me.
A dog doesn't need courage to chase off rats. Spare me. You can't tell me Lord Eddard Stark of Winterfell never killed a man. Killing's the sweetest thing there is. You'll be glad of the hateful things I do someday when you're queen, and I'm all that stands between you and your beloved king.
That was a weird way to get to that point of the scene. Like, what what he said at the end was important, but everything that came before that was so weird. Like, where is this coming from? Why are you just randomly coming at Sansa for no reason? She just said thanks. Why are you acting like you're trying to give her a life lesson?
We will get them back. I took you under my protection in front of the rulers of my city. I cannot let this thing happen to you under my roof.
But it did happen under your roof.
Many times in my life, I have...
I don't care where you've been.
Good for her, because this dude is just blabbing and blabbing and blabbing. But dang, we had two really short scenes back to back. That definitely impacts the pacing and the structure in a negative way.
You don't need to live your whole life taking commands from old men. Build yourself a cabin and find a woman to lie with in the night. I could teach you how to do it.
I know how to do it.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
I know that line is really iconic, but it really carries no weight when used like that. For that to be the first instance of it being used, it just doesn't have the impact that it holds as a quote from the show.
Is there room for Sir Alton? Put him in with the Kingslayer for now, and your boy watch over them.
Remember in episode 1, Robb said he wouldn't even trust his own men with Jaime Lannister? So why would he trust the Lannisters' men with Jaime Lannister? It's because the writers need Jaime to get out of here somehow, even though they are both caged.
I've been treating your wounded men.
And my enemies?
I've already run through the supplies I brought with me. You saw what it was like to amputate a foot without any. I assume there will be more loss of limb before this war is over. You're riding to the crag to negotiate a surrender. If I could write a list.
Come with me to the crack. I want the wounded men to be treated well. All the wounded men.
This should have been the second scene after their first interaction. It shouldn't have been the scene that we got in the last episode. That should have come later, because the content of this conversation feels like an appropriate build-up from their first conversation, because the scene from last episode was way too heavy on the possible romance, and in the trajectory of a developing romance, that scene should have come later.
I think I found what we're looking for.
Much better transition. Again, if you're going to transition between two unrelated scenes, some sort of a visual or audio transition is going to work the best.
Arya's dead.
She was a good...
She's dead. She died alone. She died for me and I couldn't protect her.
At least we're seeing some reaction from her about the death last episode. Again, I wish she would have had more of a reaction in the moment of discovery.
Out of the Red Waste and into the slaughterhouse.
I should have been here. My place is by your side. I shouldn't have left you alone with these people.
Because they're doing this scene right now, I have a feeling that she's going to find out about Jorah having been a spy and he's going to have to leave her side.
Who are my people? The Targaryens. I only knew one, and he would have let 1,000 men rape me if it had got him the crown. The Dothraki. Most of them turned on me the day that Khal Drogo fell from his horse. People in Westeros don't know I'm alive. Pray for my return. They'll wave dragon banners and shout my name. So my brother believes he was a fool.
This is really great development from what we got in the previous episode and in the episode prior, I believe. It was either 4 or 5, with basically her running around telling everyone, oh, the Targaryens burned things down with their dragons and did all this, so watch out because I'm gonna get y'all. And people in Westeros are waiting for me to return. And after this conversation, it's like, it makes sense that she would be going around saying all these things because that's how Viserys used to talk. And she doesn't really know how to lead yet. She feels like she's failing as a leader. And that's something that's very interesting to explore in her story right now, because it builds upon the issue she had in episode 1 where she was like, how am I supposed to lead the Dothraki in this red waste? And also since coming to Qarth, she's been struggling with that legitimacy of herself as a leader. So there's definitely some good stuff going on with the development of her character.
And it's you I should trust, said Jorah. Only you.
Now, where did this come from?
I don't need trust any longer. I don't want it and I don't have room for it.
You're too young to be so.
And you are too familiar.
That dialogue about her being like, oh, I don't need trust anymore, that was so weird and forced. Just not good dialogue. And she has no reason not to trust Jorah. As far as she knows, he didn't do anything wrong. So again, this feels like setup for when she finds out that he did get hired to spy on her. And while the previous part of the scene was good setup, with him being like, I should have been there for you, this is not. However, the line, you're too familiar, that dialogue is so much better. Because we had a previous scene in episode 5, I believe, where someone points out to her, that dude is totally into you. And so now it makes sense for her to react like that when he puts a hand on her shoulder, to be like, you're too familiar. But the trust stuff with Jorah, that was forced.
And before I knew what was where, well, it was all out in the open, all angry as you like, and I didn't want it. And he spread me legs, and ashamed of it. What will my poor savage father say?
Turn back around.
I really don't like the scenes that these two have had in this episode, but just knowing that these two are together in real life and seeing Kit Harington try not to smile is entertaining enough for me to keep going.
But right here in the muck.
Are you that afraid of it? No, it's nice.
Enough.
Obviously, it makes sense for there to be wildlings everywhere and for Ygritte to be more familiar with this place than he is, but just the way it came about felt very unnatural. Because we spent the whole episode with Ygritte basically coming on to Jon Snow, and then surprise, the wildlings are here. Like, okay, I guess. She's gotten her period, hasn't she? Because I remember that happens in this season. Yep. Oh, what a nightmare.
Help me flip it over. He'll say nothing to anyone.
I like Shay's writing so much better now. Every conversation she's had with Tyrion has always been so weird in terms of the dialogue, but when we get scenes like this where we see what kind of a person Shay is through her actions, it's just so much better. However, I don't remember why she ended up going over to Tywin, so I guess that's something I'll have to look out for in the future. Okay, where did he come from? Why did the Hound tell Cersei? Like, just earlier this episode, he was like, basically, I'm gonna be the only one who's around to protect you from Joffrey. And now you're going off and snitching to Cersei instead of keeping Sansa's secret?
You're a woman now. Do you have any idea what that means? I'm fit to bear children for the king. A prospect that once delighted you. Joffrey's always been different. His grace was not with you. When they told Jaime he wasn't allowed in the birthing room, he smiled and asked which one of them proposed to keep him out. Joffrey will show you no such devotion. You may never love the king, but you will love his children. The more people you love, the weaker you are. You'll do things for them that you know you shouldn't do. Love no one but your children. Shouldn't I love Joffrey, your grace? You can try.
Really good scene. Cersei's ability to just empathize with Sansa and make her feel better about her situation. Like, she's being very genuine in this conversation because she knows what it's like. The way she's basically like, love the children, but I get if you're not going to be able to love Joffrey. You know, she doesn't say that outright, but she implies it. And it's because we know from season 1 that she did not love Robert. She wanted to at first, just like Sansa wanted to love Joffrey, but then it turned out for Cersei that Robert wasn't all he was cracked up to be. And the same has happened for Sansa with Joffrey. And once again, they didn't need to spell this out. You're able to draw these conclusions and see this carry out because they've done the development for both of these fake romances, so to speak, ahead of time. And even though I had a lot of problems with season 1 and the way it was written, at least they managed to do some of this groundwork, developing Sansa and Joffrey's relationship, as well as developing Cersei and Robert's relationship. This stuff about love being a weakness is interesting, so I'm curious to see how Sansa's going to take that advice into consideration. I'm also interested in how this is going to develop Cersei's story going forward. I know that her love for Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella causes her to do crazy things, but is that going to be well developed? I guess we'll find out when we get there. If I remember correctly, Jaime's gonna like kill this dude to get away or something.
I couldn't bring myself to go and sit with my family at a table so far on the edge of the feast you could barely even see the bride. I couldn't bear to tell them what it had been like squiring for you.
I also had to replace someone's squire on short notice. I don't need to explain how that felt, not to you. I didn't have your gift. I was awful. Complete liability. My life has left me uniquely unfit for constraint.
I really don't care about this conversation. This conversation is so boring. Like, just the content of it is so uninteresting to listen to. And even though there's a couple lines in here that suggest Jaime is basically trying to butter up this kid to help him in his escape, I still really could not care less.
You'll have to die.
I'm sorry, but you're telling me this dude did not find it the least bit suspicious that out of the 2 prisoners in that jail cell, one of them was lying dead, and he left himself vulnerable to Jaime like that? Just like I said earlier in this episode, when Robb sent this guy to be with Jaime, Robb knew better, and he only did it because the writers needed this to happen.
You have my dragons.
I made an arrangement with the king of Qarth. He procured them for me.
But there is no king of Qarth.
There is now. 3 dragons the size of cats and an alliance with a charlatan do not make you a king.
Dany is me, because what the hell is going on?
Where will you run to, Daenerys Stormborn?
The magic in this show is so random. Like, what is going on? It feels like the magic just exists so that they can do a bunch of random stuff like this. Like, literally, who even cares about this storyline? That's the other thing. Did Jaime really think he could just walk out of there?
Gone to the crag, but not to negotiate. He brought that foreign bitch with him.
So just because he took Talisa on this mission, they're pressed? For what reason?
How dare you? Threatening my lady as an act of treason.
I'm dead. I'm gonna cut this out, but I just spent like 20 seconds laughing at Brienne saying that. Like, it's supposed to be a serious moment, but it's so funny because it's just so ludicrous the way this scene is unfolding.
Rain fire down from above.
You're quoting father, aren't you?
It's interesting that we had the conversation with Tywin and Arya earlier in this episode, with Tywin talking about the Targaryens being able to take over Harrenhal with dragons from above. I don't think he used the exact phrasing, rain fire from above, but it's interesting that now we have Cersei saying essentially the same thing and Tyrion making that comparison.
And if the entire city wants Joffrey dead...
I'm not the one giving the boy whores to abuse. He doesn't listen to me.
Except on the matter of marrying Sansa.
I always hoped he'd be like Jaime. He looks like him in a certain light. If this is the price for our sins.
The Targaryens...
Wed brother and sister for hundreds of years, I know. It's what Jaime and I would say to each other in our moments of doubt. Half the Targaryens went mad, didn't they?
Tommen and Myrcella are good, decent children, both of them.
It's a little weird how they had Cersei be like, Joffrey looks like Jaime, and then suddenly correcting herself, being like, in a certain light. That seemed to imply that she was trying not to make Tyrion think that she and Jaime had a thing. But now, it's obvious that Tyrion knows that it was a thing. And remember, just a few episodes ago, he was joking about it, being like, this was the rumor that Stannis Baratheon has been spreading. So is Tyrion never gonna address that? The fact that his 2 siblings not only were together, but produced 3 children together? Is that not weird for him? He just doesn't have that realization, or he just doesn't have any sort of reaction. I like this scene a lot, and I wanted this scene to happen with them talking about Joffrey, but that one tiny thing is bothering me a lot, because Tyrion should definitely feel weird about his siblings having been together in a relationship this whole time. And knowing that Tyrion and Cersei have been kind of antagonistic towards each other throughout the season, I like the depth that this scene adds to that relationship, especially with him trying to comfort her at the end, but then also not really being able to do it because of that antagonistic relationship they have with each other. I just wish either they made it very clear clear that Tyrion has always known about Jaime and Cersei from the get-go and had also given us his thoughts about the situation, or that they had shown him finding out at some point this season, or even in this episode and in this scene, giving him some sort of a reaction to it and then trying to comfort her about it anyway, especially with him saying like Tommen and Myrcella are really good kids. We know from season 1 that he's always had a good relationship with those two kids and it's always been Joffrey who's been the problem for him. So I think adding that one thing of maybe Tyrion somehow coming to the conclusion that Cersei and Jaime were real, because Cersei would never tell him in this conversation. She would never confide in him to that level, but just a little snippet of dialogue and reaction of him kind of coming to the conclusion that that was a thing would have been helpful, I think.
Kingslayer won't last a night, and when the Karstarks draw their swords, who wants to die defending a Lannister?
Okay, so back when Renly died, I was like, did they really do all this to make Catelyn think that she had no other way of getting the girls back than releasing Jaime and sending him with Brienne back to King's Landing? But in this episode, they're making it seem like she's sending him with Brienne in order to keep peace in the camp? Like, what? It's not that she wouldn't do that. It's just the way that all of this has been evolving. The way this is written right now, Catelyn sending Jaime with Brienne is not because she wants Arya and Sansa back and thinks there's no other option. This right here frames it like she's only succumbing to this choice and going against what Robb would have wanted because the Karstarks are out here threatening to kill Jaime. That's ludicrous. And even though yes, she wants the girls back, the way this is written puts the weight of her decision on keeping the peace in the camp and not on, oh, I need to get the girls back and there's no choice. They took a conflict that was presented really, really well for Catelyn back in episode 4 and completely ruined that and made the decision not even related to that conflict. Like, why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me. They're taking away the weight of that decision being about doing whatever she can to get her children back versus doing whatever her son needs in order to have the upper hand in this war. They just got rid of that conflict completely by being like, okay, well, Jaime's gonna create a scene and people are gonna get mad, so in order to calm everybody down and make everyone happy, Catelyn's gonna let him go with Brienne. That's ridiculous.
Is that a woman?
Oh, haha, we get it. Brienne's a woman and she's dressed as a knight and she doesn't look like a woman. Oh my god, like whenever this show tries to discuss gender, it just does such a bad job. I wish they wouldn't even go there.
You have forsaken every vow you ever took.
So many vows. Defend the king, obey the king. Obey your father. Protect the innocent, defend the weak. And what if your father despises the king? What if the king massacres the innocent? Where did you find this beast?
He's making good points and then suddenly takes a shot at Brienne. It feels so manufactured in two ways. One, it feels like they're trying to preemptively create a ton of animosity between Jaime and Brienne for no reason, just so that when those two are off on their own, there's that automatic conflict between them because they don't get along. And two, so they can again be like, Brienne's a woman, but it's not typical for a woman to do this or be in this line of work. So we're going to have everyone keep pointing it out in order to develop her character in the rest of the show.
You are a man without honor.
I've never been with anyone but Cersei. I have more honor than poor old dead Ned. Talking reminder, the Honorable Lord Eddard Stark fucked another woman.
Sword.
Him bringing this up about Ned's honor is interesting, but if I was Catelyn, I'd be like, who are you to talk? You pushed my child out of a window. Also, we know that Catelyn never finds out Jon Snow's true parentage. I really think it would have been interesting for the show to do Lady Stoneheart and bring her back in that weird sort of half-resurrected way that they do in the books. And obviously the books aren't finished, but I think in the show it would have been interesting to bring back Lady Stoneheart and have her find out the truth about Jon and have some sort of storyline there. Also, I know they're making it seem like Catelyn's about to kill Jaime by having this scene where he's very antagonistic towards her and she's like, give me the knife, but we know she's not going to kill him. Even if you haven't watched the show before like I have, you know that Catelyn knows the value of Jaime Lannister and that trading him is the only way to get her daughters back. So they're setting up this weird suspense thing for literally no reason. We know she's not going to kill him. Like, why bother to pretend like she is? Just have her free him and then move on.
Really, your new lord means what he says.
They just faded to black? That was random. Also, I know those kids are burnt to a crisp, but they do not look like they could be Bran and Rickon. And we know that it's not Bran and Rickon, because otherwise we would have at least seen Theon catch them. There's no reason for them to have framed it like this unless they hadn't caught Bran and Rickon. That episode was weird, because half of it was really good and half was really bad. The stuff with Jaime was so badly written and horribly manufactured. I know they were trying to frame that second to last scene like Catelyn was gonna kill Jaime, but if she was actually gonna kill him, they would have shown it in that same episode, not leave it for the next one. There's no reason to leave it on a cliffhanger if she had killed him, because that reveal being in the following episode wouldn't have had any impact. If she was gonna kill him, it would only make sense to show it now. Also, the stuff with Theon at the end was ridiculous. We know that's not Bran and Rickon. Them finding the walnut shells is not enough to make us think, wow, Theon really did capture them and kill them off screen, and somehow Asha and Hodor are nowhere to be found. It feels purposely manufactured in order to make the audience think something crazy happened when it actually didn't. All to make it feel like a cliffhanger. Like if they were actually gonna kill off the boys, they would have shown Theon and the crew finding finding the boys, battling it out, and capturing them. And then when Theon's talking at the end, it's like, oh my god, what did he do to them? And boom, they show us the corpses. But since the boys didn't even cross paths with Theon, the writers instead should have been okay with the audience knowing that truth and focusing the scene on making Maester Luwin believe that what he was seeing was real. Like if they had an earlier scene of Theon being unable to find the boys and feeling like he needed to somehow still establish control over Winterfell. It was such a short scene too. There were actually multiple scenes that were so insanely short in this episode that they would have been better off being back to back with another scene from the same storyline. Also, what the hell was going on with Dany's storyline? That was so ridiculous I don't even care. Like, let's just move on. The other weird storyline was Jon and Ygritte. I just didn't like the way their conversations were written. Though Ygritte brings up some interesting points about how Jon signed his life away to the Night's Watch, and it makes sense for her to be poking fun at him about being inexperienced now and forever, the dialogue and the flow of the conversations were written so weird, and they kept rehashing the points over and over with each scene they were in. But on the flip side, there were also some really great scenes in this episode. Everything with Tyrion, Cersei, Sansa, Shay, Arya, Tywin, Robb and Talisa, all of that was really well done, except for like the minor things that I mentioned in the reaction. And the best thing about this episode was that Stannis has now been absent for 2 episodes back to back, which is awesome. Unfortunately, that means he'll be back in the next one, especially since it's the prelude to Blackwater. I was wondering actually if Tyrion was going to say anything to Cersei about the wildfire. Obviously, he wouldn't tell her he knew about it, but when Cersei mentioned fire raining down on their enemies, I wondered if Tyrion would be like, fire, what do you mean? But they went a different direction with that scene, which is fine. Like I said in episode 1 or 2, putting the most interesting characters together in the same scene has been really working out this season, because the best scenes are the ones with the most interesting character dynamics. Back then, I was specifically talking about Cersei and Tyrion, but since then, we've also gotten so much great writing from the Tywin Arya scenes, the Cersei Sansa scenes, the Theon and Balon Greyjoy scenes, and despite Jon and Ygritte's scenes so far being kind of meh, they've managed to set the foundation for interesting conversations and character development, with a Night's Watch member now being stuck among the wildlings. It definitely seems like there's some interesting stuff to come, so with that, I will see you in the next one.